We're here to celebrate tonight the single thing that journalists hold most dear: freedom of the press. It is not only the journalists among us who cherish this freedom, but all of you in this room benefit from it every day. We started a tradition of honoring courageous journalists 2 years ago in Yangon, Myanmar, and we were so privileged to have U Win Tin, the longest-serving prisoner, a journalist, as part of our keynote dinner. He spoke to us. It was his birthday. We sang him happy birthday, and that was his last public appearance. He passed away shortly after our conference. So it was a very touching program, and we decided we must make this a tradition because it is so important to honor our courageous journalists. Tonight we are honoring the courageous journalism exemplified by these 6 brave professionals. All of them have faced threats, whether they be physical, psychological, or legal. They've been held hostage, shot at, and believed dead. Faced years. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Faced years of prison and debt, and yet they persevere and continue their important work so that all of us remain informed. These 6 outstanding journalists were nominated by alumni and the network of our East-West Center media programs. The competition was strong, and we are very proud of the journalists we are honoring tonight. Most of them are alumni themselves of East-West Center media programs, which shows the quality of the journalists who are part of our East-West Center family. We are all so proud of them. There are many more courageous journalists around the world who face threats every day. Before we introduce and hear from our honorees, Jocelyn Ford will present a brief state of the press freedoms in the region. Jocelyn is a radio correspondent and filmmaker based in Beijing, and the former head of the Media Freedoms Committee for the Foreign Correspondents Club of China. Jocelyn, please.
Thank you, Susan. And I must admit, I'm humbled and honored to stand here on the same platform as these brave colleagues of ours who've taken such great risks, as Susan has just explained. So Susan just has asked me to sum up journalist safety and free expression in this small region in 3 minutes or less since 2014. So I think that's unfair, as everyone this morning had got at least 6 minutes. But I will try to do my best. I will limit it, therefore, to what's some of the main points that have happened in the countries with journalists being honored today. Unfortunately, it's more of a bad news story than a good news, but stay to the end because we have some very good news. So far in 2016, India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan share the undesirable ranking of being tied for the 4th most deadliest countries for journalists. And they are surpassed only by conflict countries of Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. That's according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, who keeps tabs on these things. In the 2 years since we last met in Myanmar, the CPJ has documented 7 journalists murdered for their work in Pakistan, 6 in Bangladesh, and 5 each in India and Afghanistan. And that's only the number of cases for which a motive is known. In the Philippines, there was 1 murder for which the motive has been confirmed, according to the CPJ, and 11 where the motive could not be confirmed. So as the Committee to Protect Journalists says, murder is the ultimate form of censorship. But then there's murder with impunity. And according to the CPJ's, which has been keeping track of murdered journalists since 1992, only 1 out of 10 killers of journalists has been punished worldwide. In the case of India, it's 0 out of 27. The Philippines is 4th on the CPJ's impunity index. So though President Rodrigo Duterte has promised to create a special body to investigate unsolved media murders, it's unclear at this point, according to our colleagues here, how effective that will be. We can look for them and talk to them later to find out whether that's going to make a difference or not. But in media freedoms and access to information, the region here has a mixed record. Just a few weeks ago, Bangladesh took another step backward when it banned 35 news websites many with critical voices of government. But I'm delighted, the good news is coming, that I can also report a bright spot. That's Sri Lanka. It leapt 24 places on this year's ranking of the Reporters Without Borders Index for Press Freedom, and that's thanks to promises by recently elected President Maithripala Sirisena, whose name I may have mangled. President Sirisena is reopening investigations into past murders and disappearances of media workers, though progress has been slow. The new government has ended travel restrictions. Foreign journalists are welcome again. And it's said journalists and cyber dissidents can express their political views or write about corruption or the military without fear of reprisals. Several of the journalists here mentioned that they might have had to leave the country had these changes not taken place. So I think we can all be thankful that we may have more accurate information now from Sri Lanka. So in closing, I'd like to quote one of the speakers earlier today, the Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi, when he said, "We need to have dreams. We need to discover opportunities, even though they may be hidden and not obvious. And we need to discover our inner power, and more important, we need to do something." And I think that's very suited for what we're trying to do tonight in terms of going forward with media freedoms and protection of journalists. So on that note, Susan, I'll let you take the mic back.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I think you used those 3 minutes very well. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce our honorees tonight. And I know that all of you are very much looking forward to hearing their comments and perspectives. I'd like to start with Mahfouz Anam, who is the editor and publisher of the respected Daily Star in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And he's also alumnus of the East-West Sinners Jefferson Fellowships. Bangladesh, as we all know, has become an increasingly dangerous country for journalists, and using, as Jocelyn said, the ultimate form of threat against press freedom, and that is death. Mahfouz faces a different kind of threat, but one that is also meant to silence the free press: defamation lawsuits. He would be behind bars, according to the reports I have read, for more than 100 years if he was convicted of all the scores of lawsuits that have been filed against him. They stem from his apology for the publication years ago of uncorroborated allegations of corruption against Bangladesh's current leadership. Mahfouz can provide you much more information. So Mahfouz, please. Thank
you. Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here, and of course, more delighted to be given this honor, which I think I don't deserve, but I will be frank with you, I'm absolutely excited to receive. I've been asked to speak on two things. Why am I a journalist? And what are some of the lessons that I've had so far? I am a journalist because I truly believe journalism is a way of public service. However flawed, however inadequate, democracy is the best political system that we have. And a democracy without a free media is absolutely dysfunctional. And so I believe that to strengthen democracy, we need a free media. I also believe that one of the, if you like, biggest inventions of our civilization is something called the state. It is a coercive machinery, but it is also one of an essential institution that we live with. A state is run by a government who is elected for a period of time. That government has to be watched. Public has to know what the government is doing. So here again, the media is the best institution to keep a government accountable, keep a government transparent, and write about abuse of power. This is why I have chosen to be a journalist. I truly believe that it is a higher call for serving democracy, serving rights of people who are deprived of rights, and serving truth to the extent possible. What are some of the lessons that I've learned? My feeling of the moment is that the world needs freedom, free press as it never did before. Democracy is under threat from many quarters. Even in the countries that we thought it will never be challenged, it is under threat. So I think ethical and independent journalists are best placed to defend democracy, defend free press at the moment. It has been my experience that in any clash between independent media and a powerful government, the government wins in the beginning. It wins because it has all the coercive machinery of the state behind it. But the good news is, free press wins at the end. And it does so, it wins in the end because it is energized by the inalienable right of people to freedom. It is the urge of human beings to be free that actually fuels free media all over the world. To be a journalist in the 21st century, we need to be efficient, we need to be technology savvy, we need to have enormous network, we need to be many things. But just to be efficient, just to be technologically savvy, will not create the world that we dream of. Our journalism must have an empathy for fellow human beings all over the world. Our journalism must be driven by a desire to leave the world a better place than when we found it. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, however cerebral we are, our journalism at the end of the day will have to be one that comes from the heart. So let us toast to journalism from the heart from this day onwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mahfouz, for those inspiring words. I know that all the journalists here took that to heart very much. Now I would like to introduce Rawaida Rima Failosa Makarambon, better known as Dandy, and that's how I will refer to her. Dandy, yes. She's the senior announcer and broadcaster for the Philippine Broadcasting Service, Radio for the Masses, in Iligan City, northern Mindanao, Philippines. Mindanao is a dangerous conflict-torn island, as we all know, and it continues to be one of the most deadly in a country that is known to be one of the most deadly in the world for journalists. I feel a special connection to the work that Dandy does because I reported there myself in 1983, and three of the leaders that I interviewed in Zamboanga, in Mindanao, were dead within 3 months. They had been assassinated, so I really admire the work that she does there. Also, the Maguindanao massacre on November 23rd, 2009, in which killed 58 victims during a political rally, including many journalists. We all read about that horrible story, and Dandy told me that she was reporting that as well. So Dandy, we look forward to hearing more of your stories of Mindanao. Please, Dandy. And I think she's going to sit here. All
right. To God be the glory. Shukran ya Allah. Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Again, I'm Rawaida Rima Dandy Makarambon of the Philippine Broadcasting Service under the Office of the Presidential Communications, is the Presidential Communications Office of the Office of the President of the Republic of the Philippines, Malacanang. I would like to I may forget later my gratitude. I'd like to thank the organizer of this prestigious event, the East-West Center, and their co-sponsors. I'd like to thank also the Embassy of the United States of America in Manila, because they're the ones who nominated me, and that is why I am here. I thank them. And I thank, of course, my office for allowing me to come here, the Philippine Broadcasting Service, Radyo ng Bayan. Radyo ng Bayan is People's Television, we have People's Television as well, that's PTV4, and ours is People's Radio. This is unprecedented because seldom do government media receive such kind of award, because we are in the government. And we're supposed to support, promote the programs and projects, the agenda of the government. And we're more on developmental news, developmental reporting. But with so much courage in my heart and conscience, of course, because I find this job very compelling, and it's a calling, I believe, I try to get out of my comfort zone as a media, as a government media or government journalist, and courageously, without fear, dauntless, I expose issues like graft and corruption in the government, in some government agencies, because I believe this is my job as a government worker, because we are being paid by the government from people's money, people's taxes. So what is there for us to serve them? I feel like I am useless, I am worthless when I do not do that, when I can see irregularities, anomalies in the transactions in some government agencies. Obviously, there are government agencies who are into this illegal activity. And another thing is that other illegal activities that I've been into, like the illegal logging, illegal cutting of trees. One unforgettable experience that I've been through was that there was a time I was talking about illegal logging, and right there and then, there was a man who came into our station, and I was still on board. And when I finished my program, he waited for me, and I said, "Sir, what can I do for you?" And he said, "Are you Dandy Makarambon?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And then he was drunk, telling me to stop talking about illegal logging because his relatives are into logging operations, logging business, and that he said somebody heard me days ago that I was talking about their company and that I was attacking them, and I told him, "Do you have any evidence, sir?" And he said, "You were recorded." I said, "Where's the recorded statement of mine? Where's the recorded material? Can I hear it? Did I mention your name?" I did not mention any names or any name of a logging company. It was a general discussion because I was talking about the laws about illegal logging in our country. So there was no mention of any name. And then he was drunk, and I said, you better stop that because he said, I'm not doing well with that kind of discussion. And I also got angry, and so I said, why are you telling me this? I did not say that. You're putting words into my mouth that I did not say. So that is just one example of the horrible experiences that I had. And now our new government is into the campaign on illegal drugs is intensified, and I mentioned some big names behind it in our place, and these are influential peoples and former mayors of 2 towns in our province, and I got text messages that I be very specific. Who am I referring to? Some texts are saying that you be very careful with your words, with your mouth. It's like that. But I still remain dauntless. And those people I mentioned, 2 weeks after, I saw them on the national TV. And they were handcuffed. They were arrested by the government. So I wasn't wrong. So my relatives, my siblings are telling me to just be very, very careful. But as I've said, it's a calling. I believe sometimes in the middle of the night, I cry. I said, why am I into this? I said, I have 3 kids. I'm a solo parent. And I said, why should I not find another job? But something is stopping me. So maybe because of the conviction of that belief, of that principle that I can do more and I can serve, not as a public servant, a politician, but as a journalist. I'm sorry. So that's it. And my children, my 3 sons, are very supportive of me, and they just keep on telling me to be careful, Mama. That's it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dandy. That was very emotional. Thank you so much for your courage. And thanks to your sons who continue to support your work. Next, I would like to introduce Estella Paul, who is an environment and development journalist based in Hyderabad, India. Her reporting provides voices for the voiceless, the marginalized, the ethnic minorities, the women of rural villages, the poor. She also covers the environment, reporting about issues that threaten both the rich and the poor. The International Women in Media Foundation recognized Stella as a journalist who has endured death threats, harassment, physical attacks, detentions, and threats against her family while covering environmental issues, social injustice, and women's rights in marginalized communities. So Stella, please share with us some of the challenges you have in giving voice to the voiceless, please.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks, Dandy. Thank you, Mahfouz Bhai. Like Mahfouz Bhai said, before we came in here, Susan asked us to answer 2 questions specifically. Why am I a journalist? And what have I learned from the years of experience? And I was trying to articulate, like, okay, I really have to keep it within 5 minutes and make it good. And then comes Dandy, and I was listening to her, and then, everything got a bit, thrown off the track. So apologies in advance if I cannot be that good and articulate. But I will try to answer the 2 questions because they might help me better say the stories. Why am I a journalist? I didn't want to be a journalist. I didn't even know what a journalist is. Nobody in my family, my village that I come from, or even in my state, people that I knew of, had ever been a journalist. I wanted to be a filmmaker and win an Oscar or something, And and then I realized I really had to pass some really crazy test, and I was a very bad student. Well, I failed in maths every time, so, I couldn't pass through the test to be a filmmaker. And then I wanted to be an architect and go to Egypt and, excavate a new pyramid or something. So while I was thinking and trying and constantly failing to be something good, I realized one thing, that I come from a family of storytellers. My grandma was a good storyteller. I grew up watching her tell stories to the kids in our village, which is not in Hyderabad, which is in a very remote village bordering Myanmar. That's where my family folks are from, and that's where I'm from. Then I realized that I had a lot of stories to tell. Stories where every single year our house would be flooded. And my mother would take us and, go to this elementary school, and we would live there for a month or so. Then we go back a little bit, and I come to know this later, that I was not supposed to be alive today because I was a girl child. And apart from my mom, nobody wanted me to be alive. And they wanted me to be dead, and I would have been dead. There was this incident where I was sick, and the medicine was thrown away because if the kid dies naturally, so be it, you know. I happened to live because my mom failed, to accept what was told her, that let the kid die. It's a girl child. The fourth child in the house, the third girl. And she took me to a very old missionary doctor. He was running a charity center there. He didn't have very modern equipments, but he saw me and he performed a surgery. I actually had a disease that had very easy cure, but it's just that poor people like us just didn't have access to it. And it was diphtheria, and I wasn't given the life-saving shot that now kids do get in everywhere. So the doctor saved me, and I got to live, and I live with the sign of, I call it my sign of gratitude and my biggest sign of my existence, a butterfly-shaped mark on my throat. And a couple of years ago, I was in Bussum, Netherlands, with doing a course with the Netherlands radio, and I happened to meet a girl who was there from Harare. And she's a journalist now in covering the parliament in Harare. And we met, and we instantly bonded because we both had this butterfly-shaped scar. And I was, oh my God, who knew that a scar could bond people, So that's the kind of story that I tell. The stories that are not sexy, the stories that are not hard, the stories that are not supposed to be here in the first place. The person who almost died, a survivor of an attempted female infanticide, a climate refugee, because my family then went on to lose all the land that we had because of the constant flooding. So we had to migrate. So I'm a migrant, I'm a climate refugee, I'm a survivor of a female infanticide. I'm that girl who goes to the villages and cannot pee for the whole day because there is no toilets. Just to tell a story, I have to be there like that. I can't pee for more than 24 hours because I'm traveling. I'm that person who looks at climate change through the eyes of women who are sex workers, who are garbage pickers, women who are fodder growers, they grow grass for cattle, women who live deep in the village, in a state, and that claims to be the hub of information technology in India, and they have never seen a computer in their whole life. Those are the people whose stories I understand because I am that person, I'm that woman. And those are the stories, the climate change and loss of livelihood, migration, forced labor, and slavery, and sex trafficking, and molestation, and rape. Those are the things that I have lived through, and those are my stories. Those are the stories that I tell. So that's why I'm a journalist, because I can't be anybody else. What have I learned? I have learned that you can still be, despite 1,000 odds, the person that you want to be, the good journalist that you want to be, if you tell it with two things that matter the most for a journalist: honesty and integrity. Without honesty and without integrity, you cannot be a good journalist. But if you do have them, no matter what, you can bring impact. And I'll just end by telling this one story. If there is one thing that I'm proud of, Well, two things. First, of my mom, who saved my life twice. And the second thing is that I bring impact. And this is a story of hope that I want to end with. It happened 2 years ago in my own city, where I live now, in Hyderabad, in the southern part of India. I used to watch there was a building that's under construction, and there were a few people working, and there was a small makeshift tent next to the building. And I saw a little girl, hardly of like 3-year-old or something, and I used to see her trying to wash utensils like plates and stuff every day. And I didn't know what was going on. Why is this little girl, her name was Omlu, she used to come to my place sometimes. I used to give her biscuits and play with her. Yeah. And then one day I came to know that her mom works in the building. And I spoke to her mom, and she told me that she has to let Omlu wash the plates, because the time when Omlu eats her food, her mom is working. And I came to know that her mom hasn't received any salary like forever. They migrated from a village, and because of drought, and then for 3.5 years she has been working there in the building, both mom and dad, and she hadn't gotten any pay. And I wrote the story for one of the media houses that I write for, Enterprise Service, IPS News, it's a news agency, and then the story was then, thanks to social media, was shared, and then a few people in Hyderabad read the story, and they contacted me, and they went and they talked to the person who was, owner of the building that was under construction. They talked to the person, and the end result is that today her mother has been, Omlu's mother, Lakshmi, she has been freed from the forced labor, and she has been given a job of cooking the midday meal in a local school, and Omlu is going to school today. So there is power, of course, as we heard before, power in journalism, power of storytelling, if you say it right from your heart. And of course, like for me, it's every time I'm living my own life and I'm telling my own story, because I am the people that I report of. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stella. Now I'd like to introduce Zafar Iqbal Sheikh, the Bureau Chief for Ndtv in Delhi, in Srinagar. He is the Bureau Chief in Srinagar. He's one of the few Indian journalists to travel and work extensively in the conflict-ridden areas of Jammu and Kashmir. When I met him last month in Hawaii, while he was on one of the East-West Center's media programs, the Senior Journalist Seminar, he told me that he came close to death when he was badly injured in a militant attack, yet he returned to his work within months with renewed zeal. His editors say his calm, balanced, and courageous reporting provides much-needed sanity amidst a lot of hysteria. So please, with you, share some of your experiences.
Thanks so much, Susan. Thanks to the East-West Center, and good evening to all the distinguished guests. I come from Kashmir, and I also report from Kashmir only. So I'll discuss the vulnerability of journalists who are reporting in the valley. As you know, there is a constant conflict going on in Kashmir. It's not like two militaries which are fighting there, or two groups of, two armed groups who are fighting there. But there are other dynamics also which are playing out. It's basically local population also who are coming out on the roads and who are protesting. That's adding another dimension to the entire conflict in Kashmir, and that makes the journalists more vulnerable and prone to risk. Now, as Susan briefly pointed out about my example, well, it was 2002 when I had just come out from the Kashmir University. I did my MA in journalism. I had no idea what journalism is all about. I had not joined any organization. I'm just a cub reporter in one of the local newspapers in Kashmir. Just 2 months into that job, there was an incident in the office. There were 3 people who came, who were gunmen, obviously, who came in the guise of courier agents. They were looking for somebody else. It was a case of mistaken identity. They shot me. Actually, I took 3 bullets, 1 on the head. It was a point blank shot, and 2 in the legs. And then I was taken to the hospital, almost declared dead. It was a very close shave. I was left paralyzed for many months. My mouth got paralyzed, my face, my upper eyelid, shoulder, arm. I couldn't speak. My vocal cords also got paralyzed. And it was a very big incident. Before even I had ventured doing reporting, this incident happened actually. And then I thought perhaps it's not a good thing to be a journalist. You go out to earn a livelihood, not to get killed. Obviously, I wouldn't do this. But then, and also, my family said that perhaps this is not a right choice to make to be a journalist, because there's so much risk involved. And also, when you are reporting in Kashmir, there's additional risk. There's an ongoing conflict. There's, you never know what's going to happen. But somebody in the previous panel told me a couple of hours ago, we had a discussion, that how did your family take it? What did they tell you? I said that they initially said, please don't be a journalist, please give it up. It's not worth it. But finally, they were the main source of strength and encouragement. And when they believed in you, you also started believing in yourself. And that's perhaps one reason that I continue to be a journalist and continue to report from Kashmir, where the situation has really not improved. It has, on the other hand, it has actually worsened. Now, those are the problems that journalists face. There's so many journalists who have been killed, so many journalists and cameramen, reporters who are injured, even in today's current unrest that's on for the last 2 months. So many people, journalists have been injured. Now, what makes their job difficult, here I would like to point out, is that we have to understand, when you're working in Kashmir, there are 2 sets of media. One is the local media and one is the national media. When you're reporting for, both of them have their different audiences. Local media has its own audience, national media has its own audience. But what's happened, unfortunately, over the last few years, some channels, TV channels, have become rather very shrill. They become very, to say, jingoistic, and they don't do reporting anymore. I don't know what they do, but what it does, it makes the job of a reporter very difficult on the ground, because he's reporting the situation, reporting the facts, but that makes it very difficult. And the reporter obviously becomes the target of the people. There are these, how many audiences we have? We have a local audience, we have a national audience, we have a security apparatus, we have separatists, we have militants. Everybody wants you to present their point of view. So in those circumstances, it becomes very, very difficult for a journalist. So if 1 or 2 channels do this, it tells upon the credibility of everybody, and it puts everybody into risk. And when we talk about conflict, armed conflict, or the unrest on the roads of Kashmir, that's one thing, but it also impacts other forms of reporting, like we had flood recently, a couple of years ago. At that time also, the situation got a political color, since it's Kashmir, so everything gets politicized. And, you have to really hide the cameras, hide the microphones, so that you are not visible. So situation reached to that point. So it's, what I'm trying to say is that it's very, very difficult working in a conflict area. And one thing that comes to my mind is the safety of journalists, how often we think about it. at least not in our journalism schools, we are taught much about the safety of journalists, particularly those who are working in conflict areas, because there are so many agencies, so many parties which are out there. You never know who is what and who is doing what. So in those circumstances, I think since we're all journalists, we should try and do something about it. Perhaps start some sort of a campaign that this is introduced at least as a subject in universities and colleges, so that people are at least know how to go about reporting an armed encounter. I know in Kashmir it becomes like a circus. Whenever there is an encounter taking place between armed militants and the security force, everybody wants to come. People jump over the walls from the windows and they take their photographs. So risky. I think more should be done about the safety of journalists, and particularly those who are in the conflict areas, where there is places like Kashmir where there's a never-ending conflict. It's on for so many years, and maybe because in rest of the country, at least in India, we don't have so much of a conflict, so that's why it's not an essential part of the curriculum. But I think something needs to be done to focus more on this and to help the journalists who are in the conflict areas, who are reporting from conflict areas. And lastly, I would also like to focus on the access. We really don't have access to places which are sometimes at the heart of the armed conflict, say borders or places where we can't go. So we invariably depend on the logistic support given by the security forces. But when we reach there, we don't get the other side of the story. So we have to rely on the information that is given to us by the government sources, by the official sources, which may be true or may not be true. Everybody wants to push its own agenda. So there should be more sensitivity when we're reporting from a conflict area. And like I said at the outset, in a fit of some blind patriotism, some channels have sort of doing some form of reporting which is very detrimental to people on the ground and really puts their lives at risk. I think we should be more responsible. That's where I end it.
Thank you. A lot of words of wisdom there. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce Habib Khan Torchic, who is a Wall Street Journal reporter in Kabul, Afghanistan. When I met him last month in Hawaii on the same senior journalist seminar program at the East-West Center, he had just lost his best friend in the recent terrorist attack on American University in Kabul. Had he not been traveling on our program, he would probably have been one of the victims, he said. He also recently lost a family member due to the conflict in his country. He told me that every day in Afghanistan, he is on the front line. That's for him. He is on the front line all the time. He was held captive by the Taliban for 8 days in 2009. And although he said it was a horrible ordeal, he said the experience taught him about the nature of the insurgency in his country. The Wall Street Journal says that Habib never hesitates to re-examine and reshape his beliefs when presented with new information or perspectives. Please, Habib. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here, and I've been so honored to have been part of the East-West Center Senior General Seminar. It's been very fascinating, a lot of interesting meetings, but it involves a lot of travel. And unlike my other fellow journalists, I didn't make it to Indonesia, but I got a chance to chill out for a week in Hollywood in LA. And when it comes to journalism in Afghanistan, I think all journalists who are working in conflict zones like Afghanistan deserves to be celebrated, and they deserve to be honored because all journalists there on daily basis, they face death threats to different levels, from state and non-state actors, from terrorist organizations. As Susan mentioned before, in 2009, I was on a reporting trip in eastern Afghanistan, and I was held captive by the Taliban for 8 days. And at the meantime, the threats are not only from the Taliban or from other terrorist organizations. There are a lot of other actors involved in the war and the conflict there that are posing serious threats to journalists there. I was once held briefly by police interviewing an eyewitness after an explosion in the middle of the Kabul city. So the threats are from all over, from state actors, from warlords, power brokers, from the Taliban, from terrorist organizations. And when I was held captive with the Taliban, Susan asked me to talk a little bit about that. It was, however, it was a horrible ordeal, but I got to know a little bit about the nature of the insurgency. And I think the insurgency in Afghanistan, or the ongoing conflict there, is not only about ideology. It involves a lot of other factors. It's about the gaining more power, money, and most of those fighters who fight within these militant organizations, the Taliban, the Islamic State, or LET, all these organizations, most of them are just, I would say, thugs and just those kind of people who want to make money out of conflict and out of violence and out of killing people. And when I talk to people about these threats that journalists face in Afghanistan when they're reporting, and they say like, are you crazy or something, so why don't you just change your profession and go to take another job? But what keeps me going in journalism is that when I travel across the country, I go to the rural areas, to the countryside, and I talk to people there. And the way they suffer and the situation they live in. And at the meantime, they have no means and no tools to reach out to the outside world. So that's what keeps me going, and that's why I'm still a journalist. And it gives me some good feelings to sort of, in certain way, help those people and reach their voices to the outside world. And I think everybody have had a long day, so I'll keep it short. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Habib. And now we would like to pay a special tribute to a cherished member of the East-West Center family, Lasantha Wickramatunga, who was the founder of the Sunday Leader and one of Sri Lanka's most influential journalists. He was also a Jefferson Fellow. He was assassinated on January 9, 2009. The East-West Center, along with so many others around the world, was shocked and saddened by his murder. A known government critic, his death was condemned worldwide as an attack against free media. We would like to just show a short video about the courageous work and the tragic death of this brave journalist.
Lasantha Wickramatunga was not only an accomplished journalist and politician, but also a humanitarian. It is with pride that we remember how Lasantha Wickramatunga remained a friend to our network through thick and thin. A guardian of truth and a proponent of justice, Lasantha Wickramatunga founded the Sunday Leader newspaper with the intention of upholding and furthering these values. They say the pen is mightier than the sword. In Lasantha's case, this was not a mere quotation to be bandied about, but a code to live by. Lasantha never faltered when it came to exposing criminals regardless of which social strata they hailed from. A voice against injustice, Lasantha opened new doors in investigative journalism and inspired both his followers and critics. 2 days before his untimely and cruel death, when the Ndtv MBC studio complex in Department was attacked, Lasantha fearlessly raised his voice in condemnation.
I wholeheartedly condemn this terroristic attack on the Sirius MTV Shakti stations. We as media personnel will have to face up to this challenge. This is not the first time media organizations have come under attack, and it certainly won't be the last. But we as media personnel must face up to this challenge, not be bowed down under whatever threats and intimidation, and unitedly face this threat.
Lasantha had to pay the ultimate price for the sacrifices he made for freedom and justice. While headed to work like any other day, Lasantha Vikramatunga was attacked on the Dehiwala Atheni road. Lasantha's fight for justice did not and will not fade away despite his demise. 5 years to the day since Lasantha was taken from us, those responsible remain at large. The circumstances surrounding his assassination remain a mystery. In Lasantha Vikramatunga's final editorial titled, "And Then They Came For Me," Lasantha wrote, quote, "Let there be no doubt that whatever sacrifices we journalists make, they are not made for our own glory or enrichment. They are made for you. Whether you deserve their sacrifice is another matter. As for me, God knows I tried." Unquote.
Lasantha's editorial from the grave was run in many newspapers after his death, and what he wrote applies so much to all of the journalists and to values around the world, and I'll just read a few excerpts from that. "No other profession calls on the practitioners to lay down their lives for their arts save the armed forces, and in Sri Lanka, journalism. In the course of the past few years, the independent media have increasingly come under attack. Electronic and print media institutions have been burned, bombed, sealed, and coerced. Countless journalists have been harassed, threatened, and killed, and it has been my honor to be one of all those categories, and now equally the last. It is well known that I was on 2 occasions brutally assaulted, while on another my house was sprayed with machine gun fire. So why then do we do it? It is the call of conscience. The free media serve as a mirror in which the public can see itself sans mascara and styling gel. From us you learn the state of your nation, and especially its management by the people you elected to give your children a better future. Our commitment is to see Sri Lanka as a transparent, secular, liberal democracy. Transparent because government must be openly accountable to the people and never abuse their trust. Secular because in a multi-ethnic and multicultural society such as ours, secularism offers the only common ground by which we might all be united. Liberal because we recognize that all human beings are created different, and we need to accept others for what they are and not what we would like them to be. And democratic, well, if you need me to explain why that is important, you'd best stop buying this newspaper. I hope my assassination will be seen not as a defeat of freedom, but as an inspiration for those who survive to step up their efforts. People often ask me why I take such risks and tell me it is a matter of time only before I am bumped off. Of course, I know that it is inevitable, but if we do not speak out now, there will be no one left to speak for those who cannot, whether they be ethnic minorities, the disadvantaged, or the persecuted. If you remember nothing else, remember this. The Leader newspaper is there for you. Be you Sinhalese, Tamil, Muslim, low caste, homosexual, dissident, or disabled. Its staff will fight on, unbowed and unafraid, with the courage to which you have become accustomed. Do not take that commitment for granted. Let there be no doubt that whatever sacrifices we journalists make, they are not made for our own glory or enrichment. They are made for you. Whether you deserve this sacrifice is another matter. As for me, God knows I tried. How sad that Lasantha is not with us today to witness the transformations in his home country. Amantha Pereira is going to receive the honor tonight. Amantha worked for Lasantha, and he is now the coordinator for Asia Pacific Fellows at the Dart Center for Journalism and Trauma. Amantha, could you say a few words, please? Thank you.
Thank you. When we started this, you were told that Sri Lanka is now a country full of hope. But as you can see, we paid a very terrible price for that. If Lasantha Manilal Vikramatunga were alive today, he would have been 58 years old. He would still be displaying his baby-faced look with a cheeky smile. He would also be chasing a crackle of a story. In his own inimitable way, walking through the door of his newsroom, smiling, he would deliver his unique greeting, "So what have you got today?" But that is not the case. In 2009, my editor was shot and killed, a mere 5 minutes from his office, the newspaper that I once used to work for, the Sunday Leader. The murder investigation languished for 7 years and has only gained some kind of traction since January 2015. Yet, we still have no idea who committed this heinous crime. Since his death, many words have been written and spoken of this man who mentored and nurtured me during my formative years. Many have spoken about his legacy, his imprint on Sri Lankan journalism, and beyond. His brand of journalism was not for the faint-hearted. You either loved him or you hated him. Same with his journalism that did not shy away. His legacy to many has been the stories he broke or the no-holds-barred reporting culture he supported. To me, his legacy is not that. His legacy is the many journalists who found their footing working with him, who took their baby steps reporting under his watchful eye. The Sunday Leader under Lasantha was a stable of the best in Sri Lankan journalism. His unrelenting story-chasing ways rubbed off effortlessly on the others who worked in the same editorial. A glance at the winners list of the prestigious Journalist of the Year award given by the Editors Guild of Sri Lanka is ample proof to show the caliber of journalists Lasantha molded. It is they who now occupy gatekeeper posts in many media outlets in Sri Lanka that are Lasantha's true legacy. Through them and their work, Lasantha's work, and more importantly, his daring brand of journalism lives on. It is in this context that this award should be viewed. It is not only a recognition of his work and the ultimate sacrifice he made, but also of his unparalleled contribution to Sri Lankan media. It would not be this feisty if not for Lasantha. We wouldn't have had the change that we had in 2015 if not for Lasantha. Finally, on a personal note, it is an honor to accept this award on behalf of the man who took a chance on me a decade and a half back. Lasantha, may the earth rest gently on thee, my friend, and thank you for what you have made all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Amantha. And thank you so much. It's been a real honor to moderate this program tonight. Thank you so much for sharing some of your experiences. We have a special certificate to present to all of you, and I think we should give another round of applause for these very courageous journalists.